What is up guys, Morton here from SteamFirst.com with a review for Growing Pains, an indie platformer developed by Smudged Cat Games and released May 28, 2014 on Steam for $5. Growing Pains is a pretty simplistic platformer, but that doesn't mean it's an easy one. The main mechanic is that the ball you control grows over time, which means it's possible to get stuck before you can complete a level, or it might require you to grow to get to a certain spot. You can also stop growing for periods of time, and all in all is an interesting idea, but the execution is kind of boring and it isn't very in-depth. On top of that, it won't even come into play on the vast majority of levels. The gameplay is pretty standard. You avoid spikes and need to collect things to unlock doors to complete the levels. The biggest problem with the gameplay is that there's not much variety between levels, mainly because there's only 9 levels in the whole game. Whether this game is fun or not will really depend on what you enjoy about platformers. The idea is that there are 3 difficulty modes, and you compete for the best time against everyone else on each mode. All the higher difficulties really do is throw more stuff on the screen, which just kinda makes it cluttered and confusing to look at, so it really comes down to if you enjoy that or not. Because if you want a game with lots of levels and depth, you won't find it here. That's not to say it's bad, it's just not for everyone. The PC controls aren't terrible, although it certainly doesn't feel as fluid as other platformers, and sometimes you slide around a bit more than you should. Though you are a ball, so I guess maybe the sliding around is intended, I'm honestly not really sure. There's also community created content, which is hit or miss like always, but it's also a pain to track down the content. There's no easy way to play it. You need to find it on the Steam community page, and then download it from there, and there are so few of them and so few reviews that it's hard to figure out which ones will be good and which ones are a waste of time. It would be a lot better if you could just play the community created levels right through the game itself without needing to hunt them down first. This leads into talking about the level editor itself, which is pretty okay I guess. It's simple enough for anyone to pick up and design levels. It works well and is fairly intuitive, so it definitely does its job. It's not complex enough to be confusing, but because of that it's also not in-depth enough for you to design anything super unique. So aside from the layout of the level, they're all kind of similar. Overall, the gameplay isn't bad necessarily, it just isn't super fun either. It's average at best. It could be a lot worse, but there are also a number of places where things could be improved. For starters, they could have more levels with more variety to keep things interesting. They could make the controls more consistent so you don't slide around sometimes. They could add more challenging obstacles, and note, that's different from simply adding more obstacles. Jumping over one spike isn't hard. Jumping over 10 individual spikes in a row isn't hard either. It's just tedious, and that's what the more difficult levels seem to be. Gameplay gets a 2.5 out of 5, it really is simply just average. Graphically, the game is kind of boring. Aside from the color and layout of the stages, they all look the same, with all the same platforms and obstacles to avoid. Each level had a theme which I kinda liked, so for example level 1 is the alphabet, so while you go through the level you'll have to navigate through letters. Each level has its own theme, which is a cool idea, but that's about it. The rest of the graphics are pretty mediocre, and look like they were designed in MS Paint in about 10 minutes. Graphics get a 2 out of 5. The audio is a little better. The music is unique to each stage, so if you're continually playing the stage over and over to improve your time, which is intended, it will get repetitive I'm sure. If you just hop on and play for a little bit, it's really not bad and kind of catchy. What isn't catchy is the obnoxious noise your character makes every time it jumps. Now this wouldn't be a problem if you jumped every 10 seconds or something, but you don't. You jump multiple times. In fact, about half the game is just mashing the jump button, which means you'll get really annoyed really fast. If you plan on grinding out attempt after attempt for a fast time, I recommend turning off the audio, which is never a good thing. Other than that though, the audio isn't bad, just kind of repetitive. Sound gets a 3.5 out of 5. Replayability is where Growing Pains really shines. It's the entire point of the game to just keep playing over and over to get faster and faster. It's not the type of replayability where things change or you can make different decisions. It's simply designed to play the exact same levels repeatedly. Some people will find that fun, other people will find it exceptionally boring, but that's the only reason to continually replay the game. There are achievements, but they're just to complete every level on Gold, the highest difficulty, so they don't really count. Replayability gets a 4 out of 5, but keep in mind that's only if you enjoy replaying the exact same thing. If not, then you won't find any replayability here. Overall, Growing Pains is an interesting platformer with one unique idea but not much else to offer. It's entirely too short. If all you want to do is play through the 9 levels once to see the game, it honestly won't take you more than an hour. If you're good at platformers, it'll probably only last about 30 to 45 minutes. Again, there are player created levels, but I find it really hard to recommend a game based on those because you have no idea what you'll get with them. Growing Pains gets a 2.5 out of 5. It's functional and fun for a little while, but it's just too repetitive and too simple to warrant grinding out attempt after attempt on each stage for most people.